Hamjambo, this is Ruth Kamau, and welcome to Wasafiri Africa, where we celebrate Africa and things African. Cape Town is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Of that, there is no doubt. But even here, stark inequalities are evident and children are not exempt. Today, we put a pin location on Breadline Africa, an organization whose very reason for being is to uplift the lives of children and the communities they live in. At Wasafiri Africa, we'll be promoting a charity every so often. As a trustee at Breadline Africa, it's naturally my first choice. The words of Nelson Mandela point the way. There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its own children. Twendeni, Africa is ready. In 1993, Peter Templeton spearheaded the formation of what is now known as Breadline Africa. With a democratic government soon to be ushered in the following year, it was evident that the injustices of apartheid had resulted in a woefully inadequate early childhood education environment for the majority of South African children, a gap too expansive for the fledgling government to close on its own. Breadline Africa's story began with an audacious goal to play a visible role in closing this gap by providing early childhood education centers to uplift children, get them learning in safe environments, and spark their imaginations for the future. This lofty goal has seen Breadline provide over 2,300 ECDs, transform over 800 schools, benefiting over 330,000 children. In this push, in 2023, Breadline made a radical decision to lead the way in eradicating dangerous pit latrines in mostly rural schools. The result is BLASH, Breadline Africa's sanitation and health program, that has seen 495 pit latrines replaced. Championing these initiatives since joining Breadline Africa in 2014 is Marion Wagner, a woman of fierce determination, highly motivated to change children's lives for the better. Armed with an extensive international corporate experience, a full year volunteering in soup kitchens and in communities in Cape Town, not to mention being an active volunteer wildfire firefighter, Marion has been the ideal torchbearer. With a stellar team beside her, Marion Wagner has taken Breadline Africa over the finish line several times and imbues the same passion of her first day at work. So let's tap into that electric energy and celebrate both Breadline Africa and Marion Wagner. Marion, who would have thought this day would come when you and I would be sitting having a conversation about Breadline Africa, but not during a board meeting, you know?
I love it, Ruth. I think it's exciting. I am really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Marion, because 2016, I joined Breadline, full disclosure, as a board trustee. That's what we call ourselves, as trustee. And so I have loved my time in Breadline, and I've learned so much about early childhood education. And now I'm learning even more about safety when it comes to sanitation at school, with the pit latrine problem that we have in a lot of rural schools in South Africa. And it's just always fascinating to me how different avenues, shoot out from a certain path. Here I am with Wasafiri Africa, celebrating Africa and things African, and now we're going to celebrate the work that's done at Breadline Africa,
Yeah, I think it's exciting. It is a journey, as you say, and many new chapters and many new adventures, but always the primary reason for our existence is so much about uplifting. It was very much about uplifting communities, and now it's very much about creating a future, creating hope for young children in the country.
Yeah, and that is so true. And for me, it's a big motivator. I love children. I also think, and I know this is probably shared by a lot of people in the world, that children are most vulnerable members of society. And so for anyone who might not know a lot about Breadline Africa, maybe you can just give us a snippet about the origin story for Breadline Africa?
Sure. Breadline Africa started in 1993. Gentleman by the name of Peter Templeton, who worked with Catholic Welfare Development, branched out and created Isonka, stood for bread, and that's how the Breadline Africa name came about. Very much as it was the transition of South Africa, the new government, and it was to fill in the gap that would not possibly be funded by the government, focusing on children, focusing on communities, focusing on upliftment. So Breadline Africa started as a grant giver with community-based organizations to empower them, particularly in rural and impoverished communities. And then as the years passed, the need for infrastructure became more and more evident. And Breadline Africa saw an opportunity with shipping containers, which at that time were donated and very low cost, to convert those shipping containers into everything around creating opportunities for communities, from mushroom growing to art rooms, physio rooms, the very first animal clinic in Khayelitsha, to then realizing the demand came more and more for educational infrastructure. And that is how Breadline started, with preschools, with ECD centers, early childhood development centers, and saw the need for children to be learning in safe structures. So we took the opportunity to replace unsafe structures with these shipping containers, which were easy to convert off-site and to drop and go literally in places that were unsafe. And they provide secure classrooms, kitchens, toilets that prevented also fires. When fires raced through informal settlements, the shipping container became a much more robust and safer learning environment for young children.
It's incredible because, having visited these unsafe learning environments, you can see the initiative from the community in trying to create a learning center for the children. But they're also seriously challenged when it comes to finances to be able to put up a proper structure. And the difference that I have seen Breadline making is humongous. And I really want to just say thank you to all the donors, whether they be corporations, individuals who have brought Breadline over across the line, 32 years now. And just to continue to do this, because it's so important in seeing how differently the children respond to these new spaces.
It changes for the children and the teachers completely, because it also restores dignity for the young children. It's sort of, it's not just the light and the ventilation, it's also the safety. And having been to some centers where you see, the children are moving on the ground between rusty old nails and bits of broken glass and structures that are leaking, and children in winter have got coats on, they're so thick they can't even move in their chairs, huddled together. And we saw one in Massey, near just outside Cape Town, where there were about 26 children, but they were all sitting huddled together, squashed in a tiny space, no chairs, no tables, all age groups all together. So, how a teacher can possibly teach with children of different ages that are not separate, that don't have space to move, that don't have sufficient light in a dangerous environment, has got to be nearly impossible. So that's what these contain, or now more prefabs that we put in place, insulated, ventilated, bright, as you say, open spaces that allow the children to move and play and learn and have learning corners and play corners. And I think it just uplifts not just the children, but the teachers as well. And it gives the parents hope that their children actually have a much more conducive learning environment.
What is exciting to me about Breadline Africa is that the organization just keeps going from strength to strength. It is people, South Africans and friends from overseas who are part of the board, and they're there as trustees. People, this is not a paid board. It's people volunteering their time to work with an exco that is committed to delivering top-notch services, corporate style level services. And the result of it is Breadline Africa has then grown its reputation amongst the people who can assist Breadline. And now recently, moving from the early childhood education arena specifically, we are also now looking at the idea of sanitation at schools. And that is a very tricky thing.
It is so widespread. It is so underreported in schools. And I know that is, right across Africa as well. But I think it's the fact that it's the more rural, the more hidden these schools become, and lack of awareness. There is the way that these pit toilets are being constructed, and it's very easy to blame the current government and say 30 years in power and nothing has been done. But my answer to that is these toilets have been around for 100 years and nothing has been done. So some of these schools, we went to our first one, been around for 100 years, these pit toilets existed. The longer that they're in place, obviously the more dangerous they become. And now with the recent extreme weather that we've had, with the amount of floods, the pits themselves become flooded and unstable. So the water tends to flow out the top of the pit toilets. You can imagine the sanitation issues that you have. But the way that they were dug, or the way that even new pits are being built to accommodate the number of children, creates ever greater hazards. So I think we're never going to be in a situation where we're going to say we've sorted out all the pits in South Africa, because as the government funding becomes more and more limited or constrained, they're responding more to emergency appeals at schools rather than handling the infrastructure problem, that these schools are digging new pits the whole time as well. And I think that's something we are going to really have to focus on, is making sure that there are enough toilets, safe toilets at schools. And the need is huge. We've seen so many children die, not just falling into the pits, but also with the structures collapsing on top of them. And people focus on the classrooms, but they have no idea the impact that a pit toilet can have on a child and their ability to learn. It's quite profound.
It becomes a frightening place to go.
Terrifying.
It's a terrifying place to go. It's also a place where they have absolutely no privacy, because the pit toilets themselves may have no doors or walls.
Correct.
And so that becomes another aspect. And when you think of the girl child, with the older children, when the girl child starts menstruating, there's absolutely no privacy. No. So they miss going to school. But just to reel back a little bit, Marion, and just to go back to why Breadline Africa got involved with the pit latrines. The organization was doing very well and continues to do very well in providing the ECDs. When did Breadline Africa decide to be involved in resolving the problem of pit latrines, and why?
So in 2023, there was another child that had died, and that's taken the total to 9 children that have died. The number of children that fall in are not reported, but we are aware of them through the applications that we get from schools. So our real focus is on creating measurable impact in learning outcomes, is giving children a better future through education. A path out of poverty is really only achievable through education. Getting children into the ECD is critical. Getting children school ready is so incredibly important. Once you've got them in school, nearly 50% of all children who start in grade 1 do not finish or complete school. So we're losing all of these children. And there are multiple reasons why children are falling out of school and they're not completing. Issue is quality of teaching, obviously, is one factor, but also infrastructure is a huge factor. Literacy is a massive issue. So in about 2009, Breadline undertook to put libraries into primary schools, because 80% of all schools in South Africa don't have a functional library. So if children have no books at home, no books at school, parents that are not able to read to them either, the only chance of actually really developing a love for reading is a storybook, and that is through providing books and libraries at schools. So Breadline has been doing that for quite a long period of time. And then also saw the need to provide feeding kitchens, because it supports the nutrition program, because the government was stopping the feeding program if the school didn't have a compliant kitchen, but it wasn't funding the kitchens. So the non-profit organizations step in, provide a kitchen that passes the health and safety standard for the government to supply the food so the children can eat. So a child that can't eat won't concentrate. So feeding became a fundamental part in providing the feeding kitchens. making sure that children learn. So, because if a child by the age of 10 cannot read for meaning, and that's 80% of children in South Africa by the age of 10 cannot read for meaning in even their home language, you have a problem.
I always find that such a frightening statistic.
Huge.
You know, when you think 10 can't read for meaning, not even the simplest storybook. They can identify words, but in isolation. It's a frightening statistic.
Yeah. I mean, how do you teach a child about anything, geography, or explain maths to them, or explain any subject? And then the infrastructure is, as then spoke about, saying, well, if children are too scared to use a pit toilet at school, what it also means is that the children are not drinking water because they don't want to use the pit toilets. So they then are dehydrating or not eating sufficiently. Some of the schools have to close early so the children can get home to a toilet, because there are some schools with no toilets as well, because the pit toilets have collapsed, so they have no proper functioning toilet. We've helped schools like that as well. If a child is sitting in a classroom and dreading having to go to the toilet, what often happens, particularly with young children that have just started school, the teachers are telling us that they are soiling themselves. That stops teaching time. The teacher now has to help that child, the dignity and the humiliation you can imagine. So the child has to be cleaned up and changed. The next child then wets itself. That teacher has to address that. Learning doesn't happen in the classroom. The other issue that we've got is, because the toilets are such scary, frightening, high-risk places, a lot of schools are reporting snakes in the pit toilets, so children naturally are terrified of snakes. There are a huge number of flies in the toilets, so the children resort to open defecation.
You know, it is terrifying. I think what's come through to me right now is the importance of public-private partnership. As you said, you know, the government wouldn't give licenses without a safe kitchen, but they weren't providing the funds for the safe kitchen. So it's a chicken and an egg. And so here comes the private organization or person, donor, and provides that facility. In truth, in order for society to progress, we can't always wait for government. And when Breadline Africa and organizations like that step up and become reputable, it only makes society work better, because even the way a private organization will actually carry out the work may be even more thorough than the government would, because it has such a vested interest. It's a genuine interest and not just a service that is providing. Which brings me to the aspect of how many toilets have been put up by Breadline Africa in the last 2 years. How many schools have you, as Breadline, been able to attend to, and how many proper toilets have now been put in?
We've now completed 36 schools and more than 840 toilets and urinals have been put in. All the old pits have been closed up. The unsafe structures at those schools have been removed. And the benefit is probably in just over 15,000 teachers and learners have benefited from those safe toilets. Majority of the toilets are all low flushing system, because we've got to remember that water is so scarce in many of our areas.
Yes.
And in other areas where there is no water available, only tankered water is delivered to the school, then obviously we cannot put a flushing solution in. Then we put a dignified dry solution in, which looks the same, and for the experience for the child is the same, and it's a pretty closed system as well, but it is a dry sanitation. Instead of going into a septic tank, it goes into a concrete chamber. Both need to be maintained and managed over the years.
And they're a far cry from what was there before, because what I've seen, that we've been able to put up as Breadline is it's actually a welcoming space. The primary colors that you use with the different toilets, the red, the green, the orange, it just looks more playful and really just changes the whole idea of this terrifying space. And they're clearly marked for the girl child and the boy child, but also uniquely, you always include a toilet for the handicapped.
Yeah, the very small schools where there are only about 35 to 40 children, and where they're rural farm schools where access is across the fields, where there is no likelihood of any differently abled child going there. For cost reasons, we may not have put one in those schools where there are only very few. But certainly when we have over 100 children to meet the norms and standards, we always then put in disability toilet with grab rails, with wide doors, wheelchair accessible as well. And that is, for the children, for the teachers, for parents who may be at the school, or anybody from the school governing body or external stakeholders to use, because that has been a challenge at many of the schools. They simply cannot use the existing facilities.
When I was working out the cost earlier, I was actually blown away at the individual cost, because it's like, what, 25,000 more?
We'd love it to be 25,000. It's actually more, and it's the first question that we get asked. So on average at the moment, we're between 40 to 50,000 per seat is what we call it. We work it out, total cost divided by the number of facilities we provide.
45,000.
45,000. And then the answer I get is, well, if I go to the builder's warehouse down the road there and I look at one of those toilets, I can pick up a toilet for 800 Rand. So now you're charging me 45,000 Rand. And I say, but it's not just delivering that one toilet there, which would cost you 10 times more even to deliver it there. The cost is a whole lot of factors put together in ensuring that these are safe toilets. So when we go there, we have to do soil analysis testing. We have to make sure that where we are going to put in the septic tank and the soakaway system, we're not going to be contaminating any groundwater.
Okay.
That the ground is stable. We have to clear the ground. We may have to fell some trees if there's no other space. We want to make sure that the toilets are closer to the classrooms, because historically pit toilets are put far away because the smell is so overwhelming the teachers can't teach if they're too close from the old pit toilets because the stench and the flies. Now young children can't get across a field to get to the old pit toilets. Now you want to put the toilets closer to the school. You may have to take down a tree. You have to prepare the ground. We put down a concrete platform, and then we put the individual structures with privacy screen walling that goes around it, except for the grade R's, because you want to be able to monitor. So you've got screen walling, you've also got hand washing facilities. So 99% of all schools with pit toilets do not have hand washing facilities. So there may be one standpipe that is used by up to 1,000 children.
Wow.
Coming out of a pit toilet that is incredibly messy because children are scared, they don't aim, they just go quickly anyway.
And leave.
And then the child goes outside and opens the tap to take a drink of water. So the spread of disease is huge. Not only the child, but it goes on to the family who've got to work, who can't work to put food on the table. So the consequences are wide. Then what we do as well on the particular site is we have to then get all the materials to site, and all our materials are not imported. They are all made in South Africa. Nothing is imported from China, which I think is a very positive thing in terms of sustainability of the components and replaceability.
And replaceability.
Everything can be replaced.
100%.
They are so robust that a seat will hold an adult of over 200 kilograms. So you can imagine the seats don't break off. We make sure we have integrated child seats as well, so that for the younger children, the opening is not more than 20 centimeters.
Right.
So they say an opening more than 20 centimeters, a young child can fall through. So the child seat locks into the adult seat, cannot be lifted by a child. And then we use a very low flush system, so less than 2 liters per flush. Now, an average toilet is 11 to 12 liters. And the hand washing is 300 to 400 millimeters per hand wash. So we've got a patented design for the hand washing and a soap grater, so that you only have a few granules of hard soap in your hand, not soap in the
So it's not
dirt.
a liquid soap?
No, because that is expensive and that gets wasted. So we use just a hard soap, only 10 to 12 Rand for a bar of soap. They go into a grater system and you pull a lever and it's a grater. And then the lever just grates a few granules.
That is so clever.
And that goes a long way. That means no soap in the sand on the floor, no wastage, no soap disappearing off the school grounds because you just got the granules. And then the patented tap system, it uses minimal amount of water, that is on-demand tap, so that it doesn't keep running. With the system that we've got is the tanks that we use to hold the water at the back of the system. So everything is externally mounted. When the child goes into that cubicle, all it's got is the pull handle for flushing. At the back where the piping and the water tanks are is all sealed off. Otherwise, it turns into a jungle gym. The back, so that the stuff can get destroyed. So At the back, you can fill that tank either from a standpipe or manually at the back, the 60-litre holding tanks for each toilet. So they can be manually filled or they can be gravity fed from the JoJo tank through the system. So there are multiple ways. You can use any grey water from the river, washing up water, as long as it doesn't have chemicals.
And the JoJo tank is the big plastic containers that are normally elevated just to create a gravity pull for the water.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so if there is no water available for a period of time, for a few days, then children can bring water to school in a container. So it just takes 2 liters. And then after several children have used the toilet, you can put 2 liters down the front of the toilet, will act as a flush, and will take that waste through the pipes into the septic tank. So there's no more fear now. The children are looking into a toilet that is clean. You don't see any of the contents below. There are no flies. It is a very clean experience. Then the cost as well is, what happens is a lot of the schools, the pit toilets are incredibly dangerous or have been condemned or have already started to collapse. We never leave an unsafe pit toilet at a school. So what we do is fill in the existing pits. So they have to be filled in. You can't just seal them because it will collapse in on itself. So we fill them, we seal them, we either empty and then fill and then seal, and then all the structures are demolished, and then everything is taken off site. So there is nowhere for a child afterwards, because that's where most of the accidents have happened, is not in the existing pit toilets, but the old pit toilets that have collapsed, where the child has fallen into the pit unnoticed. And then it's minutes before that child will suffocate inside there and not be able to tread water because the contents will pull that child down.
Yes, suck them down.
Yeah. So all of that has to be taken in consideration. It's not just the structures, and these structures will last 50 years or longer even. I mean, they are solid concrete structures. So it's the hand washing, it's the privacy screening, it's the water tanks, the plumbing, the connections. And then the other thing that adds a little bit more to the cost, but I think is so important, is we take between 70 to 80% of the labor is from that community. So we talk to the principals and the school governing body, and we say, can you nominate, we need this number of people to come and help, and then they get paid. So they get to learn a little bit about understanding how to put the pipes, the connections together, how the toilet, the septic tank system works. So they get a little bit of experience, but they get to be employed during the time of the duration of that project. So 70 to 80% of all labor on every one of our projects is from that local community. So
it's also creating employment.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Now one gets the whole picture. And how long does this process take from beginning to end, from like scoping the soil to when you sign off and hand over?
So once we start at that school, so normally what we do, the process is generally the principals apply to us and fill in an application form, which is our sort of first screening and vetting to understand how dangerous the pit toilets are, what they need are, the number of children, etc. And we then do a site assessment. So the teams, the experts, our implementation partner goes to the site and has a look, make sure that everything is as the principal has said on the application form. And then they provide a costing. We try and get funding. As soon as we've got the funding, we go within weeks. And then it takes 2 to 3 weeks for us to complete. Now, bear in mind that taking the government sometimes 18 months from the start to completion date at a school to do the government toilets.
1.5 years.
3 weeks from start to finish. We've never gone over 3 weeks. We've often about 2 weeks. So we're very quick moving from school to school.
So on average, BLA takes 3 weeks and government may take 18 months.
So it's very exciting because if we can start during a school holiday, where the children aren't aware of it.
Right.
Start during the school holiday. School opens 2-3 weeks later. These children got brand new toilets. It is the most incredible experience to watch the joy on these children's faces to realize those pits are gone.
I think that's one of the things that I have missed because most of them are so far from Cape Town. Yes. And, you need to plan the trip, which includes, traveling time and flying. But it must be so rewarding to hear the children and see their joy. You hear it because I'm sure they cheer.
Oh, and,
you've shown us
so
clips
excited.
and pictures. Yeah. But to be actually there must be so rewarding. You just want to get on to the next one.
I know, exactly. And we've got videos on our website that show a little boy's face when he flushed the toilet for the first time.
Yes.
His mom was standing next to him. And you would think that, he just won the World Cup. They're watching the waste, everything just disappear. I mean, the look of extreme surprise. And a lot of principals say that in some of these areas, many of the children haven't been to the nearby towns, so they have never experienced a flushing toilet. So it is such a huge experience for these children. And the change that the transformation is extreme. It motivates them. We have parents who've said to us, my child's grades have improved as a result of the toilet. My child feels more motivated to come to school because the parents, the teachers' experience is exactly the same.
100%. I would imagine that would be the case. And for Breadline Africa, I know one of our reasons to be is to stimulate a child's imagination and to give them a love for learning. Mm-hmm. That's why Breadline exists. And so the different avenues lead to the same goal. Yeah. And it's completely amazing just how important working on the sanitation and health in the schools has become for Breadline Africa. So we call it BLASH. What does that actually mean for someone who doesn't know?
So the BLA stands for Breadline Africa.
Right.
And then the sanitation and health side of it. Yeah. So acronym.
It's an acronym that's really worked and made it easier for us to just conceptualize it, because we were all like deers caught in the headlamps when we thought, okay, we're actually going to go with these pit latrines. How are we going to go work with government? What does that mean? And then, as you said, we found out that BLA has the infrastructure knowledge and has the willing partners, and they've come on full force. So without mentioning any names in particular, what kind of support have you been able to draw, like from what areas in the marketplace?
From the funding support?
Yeah.
It's been mainly corporates.
Okay.
It's corporates who understand it is government's job to fix it, but it's not happening.
Yes.
Who put that aside and say lives of young children matter and keeping children in school is critically important.
Yes.
This is reality. It isn't going to go away unless we help.
Yes.
So it's been interesting. We've had corporates from the mining sector, from insurance sector, a variety of different interests, but primarily organizations that really want children to succeed in school and understand that this is such a critical element. So individual donors as well. Some of our individual donors have given too, but the majority has come from a couple of foundations, and then from particularly the mining sector is actually quite interesting. Yeah, I think it's also because the mining sector draws huge number of staff for the mines from the rural communities, and that is where the mine workers' children are at those schools. They're the ones that are getting affected. So,
and that's wonderful, because if their corporate social responsibility is beginning to look at right down to the youngest members of society, I think that can only be a good thing that can happen for the community. Yeah. Moving along, when you think about what is actually in store for BLA with this SPLASH program, how many schools are we looking at roughly in the country?
This is sort of the magical question. Everybody's saying, how many pit toilets are there at these schools? And we can only go from the experience of what we've seen, the applications we've received, and extrapolating those. So just say there are 25,000 public schools in South Africa. The government did an audit in 2018 and identified about 3,500 schools in desperate situation and focused on those schools. The reality is that was their audit. It was a very limited audit. The extent of the problem is so much wider. In order to make the problem look better, a lot of schools were instructed to close their pits, which they duly did. So if a school had 20 pit toilets, it closed them. The government then didn't have the money to go and replace those toilets. Pit toilets are now closed, so they provided them with chemical toilets. These mobile toilets are actually no better.
So the Portaloo
are not great because they're not always serviced, and they blow over in the wind, they're not stable, they smell. So they're not really a welcome sight. And the cost of these toilets, what it costs over a few months, we could already have replaced that with a low flush system. So the cost of paying the suppliers to maintain and deliver these chemical toilets, it's a crazy waste of expenditure. Our belief is that there are still at least 3,000 schools, and it's mainly down, the sort of east strip. So it's from Limpopo, it's all the way Limpopo, Mpumalanga less so. Limpopo's still got a problem. And then massive Eastern Cape, massive KZN. It's huge. I mean, just even, we were amazed, just even in Durban, in KZN near Hillcrest, which is quite an upmarket area, there is a very, very expensive boys-only college, Kersney College. Within 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes drive, there were 2 huge schools for 1,000 children using unsafe pit toilets. So it's not really hidden. Many of them are hidden, but there are still schools right on our doorstep in very exclusive, residential areas just around the corner, using pit toilets. So we think that we just had in one municipal district in KZN, in just one, we had over 109 applications from schools. So if we extrapolate that, our estimate is 3,000. 3,000 schools is 1 million children are still using pit toilets.
Wow.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I'm thinking now about Hillcrest because you mentioned it and you're saying it's like less than 10 minutes, 1,000 kids at risk. And this is an expensive school. And so how do you sensitize the community? How do you because I think some of these things, Joe Block needs to know about them and feel uncomfortable about them, So I'm driving in my nice air-conditioned, 4-wheel drive to go and drop off my kid or whatever. But I need to be a little bit more sensitive about what's happening less than 10 minutes away, which a lot of these disproportionate situations are inherited from, as you said, 100 years ago, these toilets were built. So it's not really 30-year-old government. No. It's been going on for decades. So how do we change the way community feels about it and becomes more involved so we stop looking only at the larger corporates? Because, even political campaigns have proved that a little goes a long way. So if everybody was to donate something, if the community was more sensitive to it, even if it's to the schools in their own community, what do you think can be done by BLA, for instance, in these communities to sensitize those areas about what's happening and encourage them to participate?
And I think, the challenge is, you've got to create the awareness, and that's what we continuously try to do via our social media challenges. And I've also presented to the Independent Schools Association when we've had more than 350 principals in a room and presented and showed them the reality. And myself, having attended one of those independent schools as a child in South Africa, explained the extreme difference between what I had and what they see every day to the photographs of what the children are having to endure now. And what I'm trying to do is encourage the schools as well to sort of say, partner with us. You've got all of these opportunities, and then partner with another school and help one of these schools. That's what we're trying to push for now. And we've got a couple of schools that are interested. I think people need to realize you don't have to fix the whole school. You don't have to, as an individual, it sounds so big, how am I going to help 1 million children? But if you can just help, one toilet and 30 children, that's already a huge difference. And, it just takes, a handful of people to sort of say, we'll give out, 1 cup of coffee a week for a year, and 30 children are going to be helped and have a new toilet. Every pit toilet that we close and every new toilet that we can put in are going to help huge number of children, but for years to come, not just now, but for years to come. So it's, and not just the children, but the teachers as well. The whole community will benefit from this.
I'm excited about the potential that exists. We just have to tap into it. Because once you tap into that kind of potential, it becomes exponential. And as you say, if it's a cappuccino, maybe I take 3 in a day. Yeah. Maybe an espresso in the morning. I take a cappuccino somewhere in the course of the day, and I might take a latte or a herbal tea at the end of the day. Just skip one. Yeah. It's good for your health anyway, but just skip one. Exactly. And then what a difference it makes down the line. There's a social media campaign that BLA did with a rugby player driving around Cape Town.
Oh, that was with Surf, who is one of the founders actually of another amazing non-profit organization called Menstruation, where men understand, and it's run by men, understand the challenges and the lack of dignity faced by women through period poverty. And he's one of our ambassadors for Breadline Africa, and he's incensed by the pit toilets that he sees. So we had one of our sort of mock-up pit toilets on the back of our truck, and he volunteered to take a drive around Cape Town. He sat on the toilet as he was driven around. It was an open back truck. And he drove around all the famous landmarks from Signal Hill through to the waterfront, all the way into the city, past the Parliament buildings. And as the car stood at the traffic lights and people were standing at the bus stop, they looked up and saw him reading his newspaper with his trousers down, sitting on the back of the truck on the toilet itself. And his whole campaign was, you're shocked, huh? You're shocked to see me sitting here on a pit toilet. The pit toilet does not belong here. It belongs nowhere. And that was the message that we were trying to give, is that, you may be shocked seeing the pit toilet driving around here, but the reality is they're everywhere and they shouldn't be. So yeah, it was a fun, very low cost campaign that we did.
And it was very effective.
A lot of fun. Yes.
It got a lot of attention in social media. But I think sometimes it's just thinking up creative ideas like that, because even for us, it just demystified how we're going to create awareness. Yeah. Once we saw what your team had done, we were like, oh, this is so clever. And, you want him to go around the whole country.
Oh, yes.
and do this. Yeah. It's practically, quote unquote, effortless, but very impactful, because some people have never seen a pit toilet.
Correct.
And I'd encourage anyone to go onto the Breadline website, because they are before and after pictures. And if that doesn't motivate somebody, I don't know what will. Yeah. There's some pictures I've seen where there are no toilets and the kids go out in the field. And that is not a solution either.
No, the motivations that I have from the principals that I can share, and we are going to be sharing a lot more, and the principals' own words are, I have no choice but to let my young children go into the field next door, into the sugarcane, or into the forest, where there are predators, and I don't mean just snakes. So, I mean, that child cannot be supervised at break time. There are so many of them disappearing into the sugarcane. The teachers can't be everywhere. They're desperate to go. And now you've got people from the community in the sugarcane or in the forest, or people that shouldn't be there. And now that child is at even more risk. He says, I'm here to protect my children, but I cannot. So if the children are, and we've seen it at the schools where they're just going around the school buildings, the other children are stepping into it. So it is not a healthy situation. It's not a dignified situation either.
It's not a dignified situation.
But sadly, they're sadly that the children have almost become numb to seeing each other having to squat all over the school.
Business.
Yeah. The uplifting side of it is when we put the new toilets in, and I'll say to the teachers, how do you feel? And they go, sure, you cannot believe how my teaching time has been affected. I said, positively. They said, no, I can't get them out of the toilets. They're all in there. So I have to get in there. I have to get them all out. Then we discovered one of the reasons as well was not just the fun of flushing, but also we put little mirrors inside the girls' toilet so that the girls could, groom themselves as well. So now we've taken the mirrors outside the inside of the toilet and put it on the screen wall so that those girls who are waiting to go in can at least groom themselves. Now we see the boys wanting to come in as well, because there's a mirror now available. So now it's been quite funny when they've said it's affecting our teaching time when the toilets first came, because we just couldn't get the children back into class.
It's the novelty of it, the dignity that comes with it, the excitement about life. You'd start seeing life in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Something so basic becomes something that gives you pleasure. The whole experience is pleasurable as opposed to fearful.
Yes, absolutely.
And when I think about your career, Marion, why did you choose Breadline specifically?
Well, I knew, after 20 years of corporate life, which was amazing and took me to 50 different countries, and I had a fantastic career and I'm most grateful for it. But it made me realize that I was in an organization with over 100,000 people. I wasn't really making a difference amongst, I think, 120,000 people. And it was, so I don't have a legacy there. It's like I can be replaced tomorrow. Yeah, it's got great benefits. But personally, and so when I lived in the UK for 10 years, as I was on contract there, I didn't have the chance to volunteer. It's actually quite hard to volunteer in the UK. I could raise money for an organization, but I couldn't volunteer because there were so many people wanting to volunteer. And then when I came to South Africa, there's such a shortage, there's such a need. It's a different scale. And I took a year off and just volunteered and worked with street children a lot. And I taught children how to swim because it's such a basic need in South Africa. And after a year, I thought, actually, I could put my skills to use here. It's lovely to volunteer, but I won't be able to do it forever.
No.
And I do not want to go back into corporate because working particularly with former street children, that there's you can see just by giving a child attention,
Yeah.
the remarkable turnaround in that child's life. And one of those children that I've worked with has become one of our ambassadors at Breadline Africa as well.
You're kidding?
Yeah, so Arafat is one of our ambassadors.
I didn't know
arrived. That. Yeah, he's a wonderful, special child who walked from the Congo to find safety in South Africa.
See, I knew he had come from the Congo. I knew he had walked from but I didn't understand your personal connection.
Yes, yeah, I taught him how to swim and I mentored him and we helped him with his career choices and, being like a mum to Arafat, who's now become the most incredibly successful person, who's giving back himself, who's got his own little family now. And so it's so rewarding, just that experience of having, I've never had children, so now all of a sudden I had 40 children. It was amazing. And I think I wanted to sort of really give back to, in the nonprofit world, where a lot of people join because of sheer passion, but may not have had the benefit of having experience in the business world.
Yes.
So I thought if I could go and apply business principles to the processes and the ways of working and to try and make it more efficient, we'll be able to help more children. And that was my aim, was to work with the non-profit organization to try and get it to scale so that I could grow my children.
Yeah, and you have done a wonderful job of growing your children, Marion. I've been with Breadline since 2016, and so I've seen you in action. Even before Blush, you're so passionate about it, and that makes us passionate, and your team is passionate.
Yes,
you have a team that believes in what they're doing. It's not about anything other than making a difference for these children. And of course, because of that, it's infectious. And when you approach donors, most of them are like, yes, we will come to you because the clean books, the accountability is there. But also there's the efficiencies that you create by working as a team and also on the ground.
Yeah.
So, and I think that says a lot.
And I think it's also, as you mentioned right at the beginning, a volunteer board and a highly experienced volunteer board that we have that have so many other commitments in their personal lives is still managing to contribute so much of their time to the organization, provide the governance that is so incredibly important, because I think at Breadline Africa, we want to say we are completely transparent. We're one of the very few nonprofit organizations that posts our annual financial statements, and that provides as much detail and we're also certified as a nonprofit organization with Izinga. We want to say to people, you can trust us. Trust us. We will, if we make a commitment, we'll deliver on it. If you trust us with your funding, we'll make sure that every child, as many children, benefit from that funding as possible.
100%. I mean, that's a sentiment that's shared at EXCO level and also with the trustees, because I know that whenever we have this conversation, we always say, people have given us this money. We need to be transparent, including how much of it actually goes to running BLA, because we don't want it to be a situation where the funds that are supposed to be doing good are actually just going into expenses for the organization.
Exactly. Got to stretch every cent as far as we can.
And it's working.
Yeah.
So which countries in Africa have you been to that you enjoyed or would you like to go to?
Cape Verde.
Oh.
The people were just so amazing. So I've done 25 countries. I don't think you want me to list them all, but I was a project
on the continent.
Yes, I was a project manager.
Well done. Do you know how unusual that is?
I know, I was very lucky. I had 3 years between 97 and 2000. Myself and another female, who's my IT support, we spent weeks in every country. We were putting in management information systems. So I was incredibly lucky. So
I didn't even know this about you,
that's
Marion.
how I ended up in Nairobi and in Lagos and Douala.
Wow.
I loved countries which are now I know are very different, but in 97, Burkina Faso was again one of my favorite countries.
Yes, and it's become very avant-garde now with the leadership that they're having. Mm-hmm.
And Mali, Togo.
Yes.
I was nervous in Lagos because we were potentially hijack material because of the company we were working for.
Oh, yes.
We were targets,
working for an oil company. Yes.
Had to be careful there. So we didn't get to see the real Lagos. We got to see the compounds, which was a bit sad.
Yeah.
Sudan, the most incredible, humble, kind people. Cape Verde I found was fun. The music from Cape Verde.
Interesting. The podcast that we started with this year, the person would like to go to Cape Verde.
Oh.
Would not stop talking about Cape Verde and mentioned the music as well. So, okay, noted.
Brilliant. I was the only one who got off the South African Airways flight at the time at night because I had to transfer, and normally it's a refueling in those days, and I had to get off, and kept the airport open, and the manager took me home to his house at 1 a.m. His wife had made me coffee. It was incredible. And then they drove me. It was just the friendliest, kindest people, but fun. And even despite so little that so many of them have, they make you part of, when I was there for weeks at a time.
Very hospitable.
Yeah, want you to come in, want you to come join, come for dinner everywhere. So the music from Cape Verde was exposed to.
I don't know if you remember Putamaya Music. Did you ever think about it? Okay, so there was Putamaya Music. It's a brand out of the States. But what they used to do, I don't know if they're still doing it, is they used to collect music from all over the world. And the CDs from Cape Verde was so amazing. And I played them all the time at Ikaya.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with their music, yes. And so that's the country. And then you put the music in there very craftily.
Yeah, you see, it gets me out of him to name anything. If I had to listen to music that I find uplifting, I think it'd be the Noble Youth Choir.
Oh, yes.
That it just the energy and the obviously a huge choir now, but it's just so uplifting and positive vibes. So, gosh, it's
very well received in the world as well.
Yeah,
they do a lot of traveling. Yeah. What about food?
When I traveled around Africa, I said I was vegetarian, although I wasn't, because I got a bit nervous about eating a lot of goat with fur on. Always, every time was my luck. Everybody would have a nice piece. My piece always had fur on it. So I decided, I wasn't sure if it was roadkill or not. I thought it was safe to say I was vegetarian.
You need to visit again now.
My favorite food I stuck to was mangoes. I could not get enough mangoes when I was traveling, especially in Central Africa.
Yeah.
Oh, just so juicy. So divine.
Yeah.
In terms of most creative, Malawi, we're driving along and there's potholes and the little children on the side of the road filling in the potholes, wanting money, and then you drive past, take out the soil again, put in the soil. I thought that was brilliant.
We used to have that in Kenya, and I did exactly the same thing.
But yeah, incredible. I mean, there's just so many. I was incredibly lucky to be able to do that. And I'm trying to think any country that I'd love to go back to. Oh gosh, all of them. I mean, obviously,
you have to do them again. You have to do them again. Why? So because it's been such a long time ago. And when I think about some of those countries that you've mentioned, even if it's Nairobi, which you also mentioned, there's a lot that's happened since, let's say, 2006 and now. Yeah. And so it's time for you to go and eat some goat meat without fur on it.
So. Maybe a different recipe this time.
Maybe. But, it's been such a pleasure, Marion. It's always good to talk with you. But this particular conversation has been really different because we weren't talking about numbers and, marketing or salaries or whatever. Yeah. We were talking about BLA from the perspective of sharing what it is that happens at Breadline Africa. So, to you and your team, kudos. Keep doing what you're doing. And I just hope that you will continue to attract the support that you do from organizations and individuals alike, because Breadline Africa is an organization that I'm personally very proud not only to be part of, but to say that it's happening on the continent. We're doing it for ourselves. Yeah. We recognize the problems. We're not running away from them. And we are willing to tackle them with efficiency and excellence. And anybody who wants to assist, please join us in this noble task of giving children a better start at life. So thank you, Marion.
Thank you, Ruth, for sharing the passion.
100%. Twendeni, Africa is ready.